So again, I'd like to welcome you. The topic is how do we leverage technology versus being replaced by it. Now, you all know me, so we don't have to go through that. But I would like to talk about this plethora of learning and training technologies, and the issue, the conflict that they present, possibly for those of us in the performance technology world. So I am a certified performance technologist. I have been certified for a long time, and my neighbors, when they hear that, they want to know if I sing and dance. They also assume I can repair their computers, right? So that's wonderful. But when we look at it what it means to me, performance is not singing and dancing, even though that's performing, certainly. It's really about doing worthy work that matters, not any work, but work that adds value to society, to humanity, to the world, to people, to organizations, and it does it in a way that's efficient, effective, and ethical. Okay, to me, that's the business I am in. Well, given that, then the technology part is about applying a systematic process. It's being systemic and systematic. In other words, we don't just go in with our solution. We call it solution neutral. We just walk in, we say, hey, what's really going on? What are the needs or the opportunity? What's preventing it? What are the barriers? What's feasible? What's sustainable? We do that kind of systematic process, that level of inquiry before we go on. Well, that said, in my opinion, technology is a systematic process of linking business goals and strategies. This is the official definition by the Van Teen book, okay? With those, it's linking those with the people responsible for achieving the goals. How do you put those two together? It's the analysis of problems, I would say, of conditions, maybe, the underlying causes. It's the description of exemplary performance. And then the identification and design of intervention solutions. How do we implement them, and how do we actually evaluate them, and how do we sustain them over the time? That all sounds very nice. So I went back, because I still have an old dictionary on the shelf, and I said back, what does this mean by technology? And going back to 87, this is the oldest one I had, okay? It's a scientific method, it's applied science, it's the totality of the means employed to provide objects necessary for human sustenance and comfort. Sounds nice, doesn't it? Well, then I went back to the new one, right? So, excuse me, look at this new thing. Now it's the application of scientific knowledge for practical purposes, computer technology, machinery and equipment developed from the application. So we've now shifted, there's a shift now to the mechanization, the tools, the equipment, rather than the scientific inquiry, if you will, okay? So today, when we hear the word technology, it's actually, people think of computers and software that allows them to access, create, analyze, digitize, and disseminate data. That's what we think it is. And we do that to inform people, train people, codify and archive intellectual property, and be able to manipulate that property. So it's useful. I don't mean it's bad, but it is a very different meaning from what it was at one time, okay? So my question then is, as a performance technologist, how did I go from scientific method to the digitization of data, information management, online training software, and what have you? So that is what I want to acquaint you with, that development. I want to give you a time frame of kind of what happened here, okay? So, you know me, I like to reference points. I have trouble just hanging dates out there without putting them in some kind of schema. And since we all like war, I decided to use wars as my schema here. And I went all the way back to the Civil War. And I said, well, how did this happen? What have you? Well, actually, some good things happened. The first one was the Morse code. We actually developed the Morse code before the Civil War. This was really key to our ability to communicate across distance. That's what it was in the, this is the time, the moving west and whatever, they were stringing wires. They were able to send those bits and beats, those little digital things, which allowed us to communicate across time and distance. It was a huge breakthrough. And then it was right after the Civil War that we actually put in the transatlantic cable. This is a physical cable that went from our East Coast all the way across the Atlantic Ocean.
Feeling better?
Hello.
Okay.
And what happened then is that that cable now allowed us to communicate. Before, now think about it, you would write a letter, you'd put it on a ship, it would sail across the ocean, right? You get on the other end, then somebody would pick it up, and then they would put it on a horse or a cow or something, and they would take it someplace. So the ability to communicate over distance is a huge, huge positive breakthrough to be able to do that. Well, then coming back here, now we were able to harness radio waves. So the first radio waves only dealt with the Morse code, but the breakthrough came in with the continuous radio waves. This is what gave us radio, because continuous radio waves allowed us to transmit over time and distance music. Oh my goodness. Faces, pictures, how wonderful. And it was actually then near the turn of the century that we actually had phones. There were already over 2 million phones in people's homes. This is huge. And this is where technology enabled that. Well, now we get past World War I, and now radios were in 60% of the homes. Today they're everywhere. But the point is, radios were huge in our ability. They were common phenomena to bring unity. People would sit around the box. They could listen to the news. They could listen to concerts. They could listen to stories. It was an incredible unifying way of getting information, engaging people, informing people. We weren't using it much then for training, but we were certainly using it for informing people. And it was actually then that the phone, we had phones, as I said, at near the 1900s, but now there were more phones. Phones were commonplace. Today we wear them on our hips, whatever, they're all over our bodies or something like that. So this brings me then to, because of those radio waves, now we have TVs. And when we first started out with TV, we had the 3 classic channels, and we added PBS. It was a big deal. Today, how many, you don't have enough fingers or toes to count the number of channels. But again, those TVs enabled us to communicate as a body, as a group, to bring some kind of unity in what we're doing. Now we get into the Great Desert Storm days. By the way, NOM ran for 20 years, in case you're interested. So now we have the Desert Storm coming in, and it's another big time here. And now PCs were mainstream. Now, what's interesting about Desert Storm was a spectator sport. This is the first war that we all get to watch. We would sit on our TVs, and I don't know if you remember Colin Powell. He talked about he would send out his orders, and then he would turn on the TV and watch what was really going on. Fascinating what was going on in technology, okay? And then, of course, coming down, then we had the real breakthrough was the World Wide Web, which enabled computers to talk to each other. For interest, 74, this is in 1974, I started my company. And I installed the very first local area network in the early 80s. The next day they had them all over. My server was a 486. Do you have any idea how tiny that is compared to today's power? You can't even buy anything like that. But I had a local area network that allowed my employees their computers to share data and communicate with each other. And the World Wide Web, really enabled this to happen. Okay, what was going on? Now we come into the true, what we call the knowledge economy and the information age. The reason I'm saying this is, for the first time in the 1990s, the economic value of information exceeded the economic value of our ability to produce goods and services. That's what they talk about our being the information age, if you will, something like that. So we come in here, now look at this, cloud computing. And then we had cell phones, well, they're all over. The point is, when the world uses the word technology, this is what they're thinking about. They're thinking about software, tools, hardwares, and whatever, in order to send information, share pictures, experiences, and the like, and what have you. So this information age, then, when we look at it, we have this again, this burst of, we use that technology to analyze all that data, that digitization, artificial intelligence. We have blogs, chat boxes, virtual reality. I just saw where Facebook is the largest social network tool out there. The numbers are bigger than I can, the more zeros than I know what to do with, the power of Facebook and things like that. So no wonder when people hear, they don't think scientific process. They don't think systemic science. They don't know what I'm talking about, right? They're thinking about this stuff, if you will, okay? So we are now in the age of digitization. In fact, I'm working now on a micro series, a training series for the facility managers. We're digitizing facilities, okay? Now these are learning units of 15 to 30 minutes long. So I have one on how to digitize assets. By the way, I'm now working on how to digitize people, which is a hoot, okay? But how do we do that?
Could you try again?
Hello?
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. My watch decided to talk to me, to speaking of technology. My Siri says wants me to go ahead. Okay, I'm sorry to say I watched that. Okay, sorry, bye. Okay, this is kind of, you need to know, I bought my Apple Watch at my brother's insistence in case I fall. So that means at night I sleep with this because I get up in the middle of the night. And why it only works if you wear it, right? So in the middle of the night, this thing will talk to me. It's time to stand up. It's 2 a.m. I don't want to stand up. Okay. And then, I will get up and I'll come back. Right on, you're doing good. Celebrate. It's time to have a mental moment. Okay. So there's some, this is technology, folks. I mean, it's a bit spooky, right? The point is, now we digitize through barcodes, QR codes, everything. And this is how we capture information. The power of this allows people to know what sold, who bought it. It gives you what the age of it, its content, has a credible amount of data on it. So the term, if you will, technology is where this is, okay? Do we need to consider changing the name of our? Well, the answer is yes, Bob, that's where I'm coming. We need to consider changing our name because we ain't going to win the other argument. We're not going to change their name, right? That I don't think that's going to happen all there, okay? So this evolution, we've gone from scientific methods to accessing, creating, analyzing, sharing digital data. It's about the digitization. That's it. So how does that show up for us? Well, we automate training needs assessments. We automate registration. We digitize delivery. I'm doing it now through Zoom, okay? We have the training that I'm auditing and developing and whatever for this client. I have embedded self-checks, the questions that automatically score for the person. There's no human intervention here at all. You understand? This is independent of a trainer. There are no humans. So we do that, what have you. They get summatives, reflective questions. They get feedback. Did you consider this? Did you consider that? That kind of stuff. And so Victor, I've used human performance improvement, almost exclusive human performance technology as a discipline. Well, it's interesting because it started out as HPT, Victor, and that's how it did. And now we move to maybe to get rid of the technology. I don't mean to get rid of it, but to change the emphasis, improvement, right? But for those of us that go way back, it's the HPT standards. Maybe it should be changed to the HPI standards. I don't know, something like that. So we are automating this whole process. So earlier this year, Training Magazine published its annual big survey, and this was just one. There were 2 questions that listed the softwares out there, ask you which ones you're certified in. This is only one. The list is huge. What could you get certified in? Now, why am I saying this? Because I also audit this training that does not follow any learning discipline at all. Okay. There is no feedback. There is no practice. There are no examples. You know what I mean? They violate all of that. And then they want to know, is there actually, their information dumps, but the point is the information itself is not well formed. It's not even structured well, something like that. But this is how I got started. I got started when I saw that survey, and I filled it out, and I went, and there was nothing there about inquiry, validation, nothing about looking at the work environment. You know, there was nothing there. That I found it fascinating, which explains to me why some of the work I see is poor at best. Okay, so we know if the goal here is to enable people to perform better, we know there's some minimal stuff that's required. Clear, relevant content. People need to see, why is that relevant to me, right? We need good and bad examples. Here's what it's done well, here's what it does bad. By the way, bad example, this is one of the hardest things to write. But I can tell you that in the work I'm doing in the school improvement area, we have created good and bad examples, and it's actually painful exercise for me, but I'm very proud of that particular work. Then performance support tools. So when I finish with you and I go home, what do I have to help? I mean, where are the job aids, the tools, the cues, the guidelines that I can apply to help me in the real work setting or whatever setting after the formal training? This is essential. And how do we take this and make it real? Practice. Practice is really number one. People actually have to have practice, but practice without feedback is senseless. So what are we doing to enable people to actually do it, test out? Do they understand the concepts? Do they get feedback and what have you? And then if we really want real learning, is reflection and discussion. What did you learn from that? What lined up with your past experience? What were you thinking of when you were doing that? And then discussing that with others. We know that those last 3 are absolutely essential if we want behavior change on the job. And yet the technologies, if I go back here, these don't always enable that. Okay. So that's kind of where I am. All right. So how do we, Bob, differentiate our systematic processes from technology used to access, create, disseminate digital information? How do we do that? Okay. Now, we have another chat here before I go on. Let's see what we have here. Mentoring. Got it. We can do it by mentoring, right? Okay. Well, one of the things that I think that we should consider is that when we take a systemic or systematic view of things, we look beyond our own world. We look what's going on outside, okay? Society, the economy. And right now, the world is kind of upside down, in case you're interested in all of this. But as much as I am troubled by it, I guess I can deny it. That is a solution, right? I can pretend it, put a bag over my head, right? Right, Ron. Yeah, I could just, forget it's there. But the reality is we're seeing disruptions at this level that no one had really ever anticipated before. And do we have the infrastructure to deal with it? So this is what we bring. And then when we look at the workplace itself, we're saying, are things aligned? what the leaders say they want, what really happens. Are we really agile in our structures? Is our vision really aligned? Do we really support? I love this. We want continuous improvement. Do we really support that? I don't know that we do. I don't know that we do. I think it's like lip service. You know, it's like me wanting to get skinny. The truth of the matter is I still eat chocolate, lots. Okay. The truth of the matter is peanut butter jelly is home run with me, right? The truth. So we need, what are we really doing with these kinds of things? All right. So, and then the work itself, what are we actually people doing? This is really interesting now that people are coming back to work or being asked to come back to work after COVID. Now the question is, these people, we've had highly productive time and we're saying we want them back now without looking at why they were productive. It was fascinating to me. So people have been able to do very good work without bosses, which this is a secret. I really think if we've discovered that we don't need middle management, people know how to do their work. Wouldn't that be awful if we actually displaced all the middle managers? So anyway, so when we look at the work, we're now looking at the infrastructure that people have, which is computers, which is access to good data, which is the digitization, which it is that. And do we have, like some of us were talking about the temperature before we started. I mean, are we in a world that's too hot, too cold, too humid that really enables? So these are realities that we have to have, right? And then the people themselves need to have the skills, knowledge, attributes, whatever the incentives to do the kind of stuff that they're doing. This is also essential to them. And do we really have what people require? That's what we bring to the party. And then our training, if we're doing that, should at least embed the tools. That's what they should have, performance support tools. And I don't know why you can do it without that, right? So that's kind of where I'm going. All right, I have just dumped on you. That's because I'm freezing where I am, right? Trying to get circulation going. By the way, it's 90 degrees in the room next door, so it's kind of broken here. But so I'd like to say, did you get any thoughts from what I had to say here? Do I need to put you, I can put you in breakouts here and see what happens. The question is, how can we differentiate our taking a systematic process from technology used to digitize and create that information? Or even should we bother? Maybe this is something we should just get over. I don't know. Well, why don't I do this? I have enough of you here. Why don't I put you in small breakouts and ask you, let's take a few minutes and you can get to know your neighbors here and talk and see what we have here, right? Let's go from this, see what happens. Right. Very good. So I'm now going to open it and you guys can, let's take 10 minutes, okay? Go from there. All right. Bye. All right, so recording's back. Seriously, I would like to know, I'd like to continue the discussion, all right? So what were you going with that I ended up abruptly and I didn't mean to, okay? Come on.
All right.
Judy.
I was going to make a point that I didn't make, and I may get a phone call any second and have to go. It was just the old thing from HBT was always work, worker, workplace. Okay. And I don't get that with a lot of the technological solutions. However, I do want to make the point that virtual reality, for example, can really engage and capture the workplace. So it's a complex issue.
Okay. Who else would like to say something here?
I'd like to add to that comment that it virtual reality also can make the workplace better or worse, depending on who we let control these environments and these businesses. So it's like all our other experiences where we thought, things are going to save the world, and then kind of repurposed to show the dark side of things. But I do think what we can do is in a virtual environment is get rid of the worst things about the office, not try to replicate it, and then introduce new things into the office that make it better, like moving around and exercise and getting away from your desk while, if you want to work while you're doing that, you can. So just one example.
And I think we should demote technology and replace it with human performance improvement.
Yes.
I think improvement is more of the end, improvement in work and workers and workplaces. Technology is a very important means. But there are a lot of improvement methodologies that also have a lot to add to our work.
Okay, Rania?
Yeah, I guess what I'm thinking about, because I work in places where people are choosing technology over human performance improvement, or at least I'm in competition with technological solutions. And the barrier is that people are going very, very fast. And we haven't, in my personal humble point of view, taken time to challenge, well, one, understand the problem well enough, and then two, challenge some of our assumptions. Because, AI is coming, and I just read an article that AI is empathetic now. They can make AI empathetic. So if we don't take control of our assumptions, some computer designer will and design them in for us. And to your point earlier, Judy, I'll say it's always been challenging in the human performance field and the learning field to educate on what is critical for learning, and then vie for the time, the resources, the environmental supports to do so. So there's a misnomer that technology can do it. Technology will do it. Someone else will do it. And for me, again, it goes back to assumptions and understanding the problem and what is the human part of it that's valuable and necessary.
Well, if you look at a lot of what's going on, they're trying to remove the human out of the work altogether, totally automation. But that's another issue. Lou, you want?
And they can't in all cases. There are semi-automated operations in food, for example. It's not going to get, technology robots in a minute.
What? Lou, you were going to say something? Excuse me.
Yeah, Judy, one, I really liked your presentation. I think it packed a lot in there, but I think it really brought at least the point you're trying to make or present. You did it very well. So thank you. I think that to me, technology or computers and whatever the way you've defined it is intended to help or improve human performance. In very few cases, it's being used to replace it. And that's why culturally, when you look at organizations and society, if we keep pushing faster and faster for the technology as defined, the new definition, performance technology could wind up being like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, because they don't care. The technology pretty soon is going to take the place of the human, or all the human's going to have to do is push this button or this button. So. I think it's important that we step back a minute and say, okay, if we do that, if we figure a way to differentiate the systemic and systematic processes, we want to make sure that we're doing that with the understanding and context of how we're going to use it, and when and where and how. Because in some of these companies that are running so massively towards technology, it really won't make a difference. Anyway, just a thought.
I don't know if you saw today's New York Times. It's got a special edition on technology. And I read it this morning. It was fascinating to me because one of the things has to do, when the internet first started, Government said it didn't need any regulation because it's a fad, it's a toy, and it will go away. Well, they kind of misread that one, didn't they? And now they're saying same thing about we don't have to worry about social media. They said because and now all of a sudden, it's actually the social media people are saying, I think you need to pay attention, particularly about who's paying for these ads, who's really sponsoring the information and what have you. So there's really a dilemma about wanting to sponsor or feed innovation without really comprehending what are the implications of that and what kind of controls are actually needed and what have you. By the way, it was one of the countries have now, the charger cables, it drives me crazy that I have 7 of them because they're all different. Well, now it's one nation has now required all of the technology people to have one uniform. Now, it's like one plug. We don't walk around with 13 plugs to plug in our fan or something because we have a universal system. Well, so some of the countries are now saying, excuse me, this is crazy. But what I'm saying is that technology is really quite wonderful, but it is a means. It's not the end. And I think that's maybe where the confusion is.
Well, Judy, I think it's the whole EU. The European Union has said that the companies are going to be required by 2025 to have a common cable.
Yeah. Right. Well, maybe we'll get it here too. Wonders there. Right.
And this suggestion may seem extreme, but with the growth of AI, and none of us will probably be around to see it, but was the movie Terminator a picture of the future? Just curious.
Well, I don't think so. I don't, it was the president of Siemens who said, I thought my job was to create jobs. And yet he's being rewarded for eliminating jobs.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember. I'm sorry. I can't remember. But do you remember when, as the internet started growing and getting bigger and bigger, and the different browsers started coming up, and then the government went and hammered on, I can't remember the browser that had like 90% of what wasn't Internet Explorer, but the browser that had like 90% of all the users, and the government came in and said, you can't do that. You got to let other people. I think it's all what's the expression? Show me the money, follow the money, and you'll see who is influencing corporate decisions.
Well, and e-commerce is becoming such a bigger part of our economy. It's scary that that the human performance field isn't having more influence on e-commerce. It's really being led by, I think, marketing function, let's say, and these influencers and creators, content creators. They could benefit so much from a human performance X approach.
By the way, an idea for you is I think we need to get away from performance improvement because it says efficient. I think there's also about, when we talk about performance improvement, that means you're on that, we really want to fire you and we're just still justifying it. Maybe it's human performance excellence, or maybe it's human performance something else,
Enhancement? Would enhancement
I love
work?
that.
Excellence, optimization.
I love that.
So because performance improvement has a lot of baggage to it. It's an HR, it's associated with human resources, and we want to get rid of you. We're now justifying firing you. Okay. So I think that's something for your consideration. Okay. So I think we need to come up with a new way of presenting.
So how about just human performance, taking the focus away from technology itself and putting the human performance back in the equation would, I think, go a long way towards steering us in the right direction. And one other thought I had, I just read, I don't know where, that teachers are really pushing forth an initiative to get rid of phones with children. Now, when you think
Close the
about
classroom, right? Mhm.
yes, because kids, I mean, this can be a great way to learn. But what it does is if you're so focused on it, obviously you're not interacting, you're not engaging with other people, you're not practicing, the phone doesn't give you opportunities to really do those things, to change behavior, demonstrate learning, practice new behaviors. It doesn't. So I think it's interesting that our educators at that level are looking at removing technology in support of learning. But I also think there's a place for both technology and this human factor that's essential in the world we live in. It's just my thought.
That's worthy of your sharing, Laura. Thank you very much so, because I know that if you always walk around here, you don't see other people. You don't bother to listen to them. You don't bother. We want people. We say we want compassion. I don't believe we do, but we say we want compassion. We say we want, the team pulling together. That the team does more than an individual. But then we make it very hard to do that level of collaboration. We don't model it and things like that. So how could technology enhance that in deference to interfering with it? And certainly when children are learning things, maybe there's a time and a place for it. Mike?
Well, it's going to get really interesting because our phones are going to get a lot smarter in intelligence, and I think what I'm predicting is it's going to be more of a companion, and it's going to be there to help us. Right now, they're super, super dumb. I mean, they're waking us up in the middle of the night, telling us to get up, right, Judy? So, but eventually, they're going to be pretty smart, and it's going to be interesting because it's going to change our human psychology a little bit. Well, we're going to, because we're all kind of basically alone as individuals, even with a close partner, we're still kind of alone, and we don't always share our innermost thoughts all the time. But I think when we have a companion AI that's really intelligent, we're going to be sharing a lot with that AI. And we already see some trends of that in Japan and some other places with even this rudimentary kind of companion AI. A lot of that gets sensationalized as dating apps, but it's going to be much more than that. It's going to be an extension of us. And so, that's not going to happen right away, but it will raise some interesting issues about where we draw the line, especially when it comes to the classroom and learning. We may see that different philosophies trying to take hold where, some classrooms, hey, you got to have your AI with you because you're super smart with it, and that's how you're going to do your job, and that's how you're going to be productive or successful. But then again, it's like, the other side of the coin is there may be classes where you have to turn your AI off. I won't even call it a phone anymore, just your AI hardware, and try to learn without it. Because we got to.
I'm sorry, Mike. Go ahead.
That's okay. I was talking a long time, please.
So one thought that came to me as you were speaking was the idea of kind of having this emotional attachment to a device outside of you. And I remember distinctly watching the Twin Towers go down on TV, a horrifying experience. Mm-hmm. And no one around me commented. I was in a college and no one was saying, "Oh my God." So when you watch that, you're removed. You have the inability to be empathetic to all of those people in that situation. And we were just watching through a television, a news program. This is really going on. So my fear, my great fear and anxiety is that we will lose the ability to empathize and relate to one another and connect to one another because of technology. I mean, it can be a way to connect. How you doing texting? But you have kids who are shooting at police, as a game, as if it were a video game. So these are the things that I question with technology. Does it really make us lose our empathy and diminish our experience as human beings? Yes, we might be smarter, but we're destroying one another and ourselves to a certain degree. Just a thought. I know I went on too.
Just real
Oh,
quick.
so it's,
The BK wants to say something. Go
Okay,
ahead.
go ahead.
Put yourself off mute, BK.
yeah, Judith, it also depends on,
You froze on us, BK. Go ahead. It also depends on. Well, we're waiting for him to unfreeze. I want to remind you of what Bob suggested. Have we built an end state? Have we really defined, which comes back to, if we're doing this, what do we want society to be? BK, keep going. It looks like you're back with us now.
okay, I was just saying that it depends on what orientation you're coming from. And, the overarching frame that I see in improvement for me, and from an organizational development background and not instruction technology background, to me, what's important is people, process, purpose, content. And I view technology more at the content side of the thing. And I try to emphasize more on the people and the process and the purpose side of things. So, I'm just trying to say that, again, not to get too hung up. I don't get hung up on technology. Just as long as I know sufficiently enough to use it as a tool where I'm trying to implement certain improvement programs.
In addition.
Yeah. Right. Susan?
Yeah, Judy, I don't know if you recall this. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
But when I first got, maybe it was around 2010, 2005, there was a discussion going back and forth about the use of technology first coming into the field, and then people saying, but technology, and there were two writers, and I can't think of them, but I will find them. And one talking about, we have to remember technology is only a tool for learning, and somebody else was talking about the expanse of capabilities. Do you know what dialogue I'm talking about?
No.
No, I'll have to find it, but it's there, and this goes back sometime. So I just wanted to point that out.
Good. Good.
Judy, could I make a suggestion? Since we have so many people on, and I can see the people are trying to, chime in. At the bottom of the screen, there's a thing that says reaction, and if you just click that and click the raise hand, then the people will be noticed. You'll be noticed quicker as to you want to talk, say something. My suggestion.
All right. Thank you, Edith. Thank you, Edith. Victor, it looks like you wanted to say something.
Yeah, and I was going to say, those of you who are in gallery view that like to move your screen around, when there's a raised hand, you can't move the people's pictures around anymore. Hopefully Zoom will fix that sometime soon. But I was going to agree with what Laura said, and a lot of the comments about technology being a tool. I've been in law enforcement for several years, over 3 decades, but for probably half that, I was also a paramedic. And in paramedic school, our instructor was constantly reminding us, treat the patient, not the monitor. She would ask us, what's your patient's blood pressure? And she would turn the monitor off, or she would take the blood pressure cuff away. We're like, well, how are we supposed to check? We don't have the tool anymore. Check a pulse. If you have a radial pulse, you have a systolic blood pressure of at least 80. If you have a carotid pulse, you have a systolic of at least 60. You have to actually interact with your patient. And to the comments about how we use our mobile AIs in our pockets, I think that people are more interested in getting a mass response from all these people who aren't in their immediate environment than they are what's actually going on in front of them. I happen to be sitting in a hotel lobby here. Yesterday, I interviewed with the Portland Police Bureau and the mayor about the events that happened just a block from here that everybody saw on CNN. And a lot of their perceptions of what happened and why is people were trying to get a reaction. It wasn't about what was going on here in Portland, obviously, because George Floyd did not happen here. But the reason why people were doing that is to get the reaction, and they're able to get that now because of this technology. Is that good or is that bad? And that goes to the 9/11 comments about our lack of humanity when we rely too much on using AI technology in our communications and not just to inform ourselves and learn.
I just like to point out that beginning around Desert Storm and actually during NAM, we turned war into a spectator sport. You were able to watch people die. You could actually watch things going up. And I'm a big NCIS fan. So I have NCIS and I'm NCIS LA, NCIS New Orleans, and now NCIS Hawaii. And by the way, LA is by far the most violent. But I get to watch people getting murdered and blown up. How then do I develop the empathy that Laura is talking about? It's something out there. And so when did you, and the truth of the matter is, if I really want to, I need to go out and dig in the dirt and I need to plant things. That's how, I need to talk to my neighbors. I need to reach out. So when I'm a big believer in technology, but when do we not use it to let people know that empathy it's also a tool. It's also important for us. And it's not something off in the distance. Okay, something like that. So it to me, it's a real, I'm I guess we could study it, things like that. I'm more concerned about what happens there. Excuse me, people are calling me and I'm hanging up on them. But this comes back to technology, doesn't it? One of them's my dentist who's desperately trying to get to me. Oh, well, we'll get there later. But my issue here is really, how do we distinguish ourselves as value adding, right? So that we are part of this to help our clients, advise our clients, and the good use of technology. How do we do those things? And I think our name, calling us human performance technologists, hurts us because people associate us then. Again, my neighbors all think I can repair the computer. I get regular calls. My printer won't talk to my printer. So, and by the way, I am not technologically astute. I'm the wrong person to ask. But anyway, but they all think that's what it's about. Yes, Tom.
When you say, how do we distinguish ourselves? What audience are you concerned with?
The people who hire.
Yeah, I mean, potential clients or public in general. My thought is this, that you talked about good and bad examples. I think that would be a great way to distinguish, products which are made by, using this technology, using performance improvement methodology, and those which are not. There's such a stark difference, I think, in showing and then also attaching the results or the outcomes of that work.
Or if we say our work is performance, anything else, we're talking about helping organizations do work that matters, worthy, and do it efficiently, effectively, and ethically. So we want them to do it, but we don't want them to destroy the earth. We don't want them to destroy each other, right? So I think, so part of it is our goal is to help organizations do things that matter, add value to society, whatever, okay? And so I think part of it is that we have to remember we do that. And many of us do that because many of us actually are involved in learning and development. That's the bulk of our work. The bulk of my work is around assessment and measurement, but for most of my colleagues, that's not true. So BK, he's talking about organizational development. His world is different than many of us, or something like that. So, so by the way, he proposed human performance methodology. Okay. So the point is, I think we need to figure out a way, if we want to play in the field, Tom, and I would like my neighbors to better understand what I do. I would like people who could potentially hire me to better understand what it is that I do. Right. So
might I suggest one other important audience is ed tech. Educators in the K-12 and higher ed arena could, I think, really benefit from a little more human performance perspective.
Right. That's another potential audience. But you're like with anything in messaging, you need to know your audience and your purpose. Coming back to what BK said, it's the process, the people, the purpose, what are you trying to accomplish? And then you always tailor your message to that audience rather than but your message needs to somehow be consistent one way or the other. You're right. So who are we talking to? Right. Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for joining me today. And I've really appreciated the exchange. And I would like to tell you that I'm toying with, I get bored, so I'm dangerous. So I'm toying with a new idea about going to expand my consulting series to deal with the part that nobody talks about, which is the interpersonal and communication skills that a consultant needs.
Great.
So I'll be surveying you to get your ideas and your input on that, by the way. So that's the reason I'm warning you. Okay. So do any of you have any final comments or thing you'd like to say before we go on?
It's nice to see everyone. It's nice to see everyone again.
Good discussion. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Well, thank you very much for joining me. I deeply appreciate it. And by the way, I added a happy hour. I don't know if you saw that in your email, and that was because people kept saying they couldn't come in the morning. So it's strictly what that's about. So it's one of my experiments. It's when I get bored, it's one of those things. So I still have my coffee tomorrow and I have my happy hour. And Mike, I know you signed up for one of them, but you should be warned. I understand there's a young man, I assume he's young, he might be 92, who's joining us, who really wants to talk about AI. Okay, so I told him he had to. You're the one. Okay, so
thanks for the warning. Yeah, the youngins are going to keep us on our toes, aren't they?
I just want to give you a one up here. You're gonna somebody's gonna raise some issues around AI or something like that. All
right. Well, it's going to save us or kill us. I'm not sure which, but I guess we'll find out.
Well, I'm going to come back to what Bob said. What is the end state we're looking for?
Yeah, exactly.
Do we want a humanity where we can collaborate and work together? Do we really believe there's more power in together than there is into the Lone Ranger hero on a white horse? Mm-hmm. Are we really believe, what is it we really want? Do we really believe the earth is worth protecting and nurturing? So I'm into the hard questions or something like that. Awesome. And by the way, if you think taking on the NRA was hard, wait till we take on the Chemical Society.
Oh boy.
Okay? We haven't even started there, honey. So the chemical, when you think about the chemicals, the world is better through chemistry. If you think of the chemicals in our system, in our foods and whatever, we haven't even started to look at the implications on that, okay? And I think if you want to fight a battle, you think the NRA is hard, honey, they are peanuts compared to chemicals. So it's an interesting world ahead of us, all right? I want to thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Judy.
Bye.
Thanks, Judy.